Hey guys, welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time tuning in. This is the Switch Show, and I am your host, Maliseh Chinonye. Welcome. Uh, this is amazing what we've been able to do and what we are doing with this little community. So I put out a poll on the last episode. I don't know how many of you who listened were able to vote on the poll, and I think the poll is strictly on Spotify. So if you're using Apple Podcast or whatever podcast channel, you would not be able to vote for that poll. But I think the poll expires by the time this episode goes up, being Tuesday. The poll would have expired. So I'm going to put up the same poll again for this episode. What is the content of the poll? Basically, I'm asking, what should I call you guys? You know, you guys are guys. There are a couple of names, or like two names I put. So if you do not like those two names, or those two names aren't given, then you can suggest in the comments. There's also a comment section on Spotify. I don't know if it's available every other place, but there's a comment section for you to let your feelings and opinions be heard. So I'm on the back end. I'm going to be going through every comment. I'm going to be going through every single thing, basically. And I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what your suggestions are. I want to hear what you got from the podcast. I want to hear your stories. You know, I want to hear everything. That is the essence of a comment section, I would say, for us to interact. I promise I would reply to your comments. So yeah, use the comment section. Even when we are up and running on YouTube, I would still implore you to use the comment section here on Spotify as you would with YouTube. You know, interact in both places. But anyway, that's not the crux of my discussion today. Today I want to talk about something that I've changed the name. I've changed the name around a couple times. The very first time I got the idea to talk about this, but I don't know if I already have an episode. I think I have an episode up, so this is an updated version of it. You know, but the very first time I got the idea was in 2021, and the title was Legacy. This time around, I changed the title to be Hall of Fame. You know, how many of you watch wrestling, WWE? So in WWE, there are superstars that make WWE. For example, there are multiple wrestling companies. There's WWE, there's TNA, there's AEW, there's there's Japanese wrestling, and a whole lot. You know, there's an assortment. There is a healthy variety of wrestling shows for you to choose from if WWE is not your vibe. But yeah, WWE has been running for decades, and there are certain superstars that over their career they are so impactful and so influential. And this is not restricted to just in-ring competitors. You know, the people who parade as, you know, managers of these characters and these individuals on live television also are part of the storyline, also are part of the overall plot, you know. And when all is said and done, whether they are still wrestling or they've retired, they get inducted into what is called a Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is, it's a specially reserved right to people who have had impact, maybe transgenerational, maybe just generational. They've had so much of an impact on the company and in the world of wrestling. They are synonymous with the company WWE, and they're synonymous with wrestling, modern day wrestling, wrestling entertainment, sports entertainment, in essence. And so that was the correlation I was going for when I titled this Hall of Fame. And the whole idea behind this episode comes down to two questions I have. And those questions are: what would you be known for? And what is the end goal of life? I'll start with: what would you be known for? Look at me, for example. I pride myself in the knowledge, or I pride myself knowing that I can do a lot of things. Wherever I find myself, I would succeed. Of course, there would always be discrepancies, there will always be ups and downs, there will be times of doubt, no doubt about it. There'll be times of doubts, there'll be times where my abilities will be questioned. And the beautiful thing about it is I'm open to learning. I've always been, and I always will be. I saw something somewhere, it was a caption on someone's post, and basically she's an entrepreneur, and she has been cosplaying as a corporate girly. Entrepreneurs pride themselves in the freedom of not having to work a 9 to 5, not having to be ingrained in that hustle and bustle. But now she had to do it. She had to ingrain herself in 9 to 5. More, I don't know why. I really can't explain her whole life just by an Instagram post. But what I'm driving at is she wrote something. There was something that caught my attention in the caption, and she said something that when you're working in a system like that, show up as a learner, not a knower. And the book I've been reading, The Power of Why, talks heavily on that. It stretches the idea of the knowers and the learners. People who think that they know, people who think that they have so much reserve, so much in their reservoir, so much in their arsenal to readily use, dispense, detonate at any given time. They stand a higher risk of being obsolete than people who are learners, because people who are knowers follow a certain system. Systems are great. I talked about system on the last episode, the last one I recorded, and I've talked about it a couple times. Systems are great, but the beauty of a system, the beauty of a functional system, is the ability is the ability to develop, is the ability to evolve. Yeah? Now, if a system that you've built doesn't have the ability to evolve and change, basically it is not irritable. If it doesn't have the ability to respond to stimuli, you're setting yourself up for failure, in essence. Now I would expatiate a bit before I continue my train of thought. For example, if you've committed to working out, if you're living alone or you're living with your family, whatever your living situation is, you've so developed and created a system that works for you seamlessly. Now, sometime in the year, you have to travel to a different country, different time zone, probably take you a day or two to get acclimatized with the whole time zone change due to jet lag. And some people say jet lag is not real, but I don't know. I've never had to change time zone, so I can't really give a verdict on if jet lag is just a conspiracy theory. I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is, let's say a day or two you take off your workout schedule. Now, The gym is not so close to you. Everything, basically your whole system is upended. If your system doesn't have the ability to evolve, you find yourself slipping in your goals. The goals you set for yourself, you slip. You say, oh, it's no longer convenient, so I can't do it. So systems are built for structure. They are built for growth, and growth is not always convenient. Systems can be used for convenience, but leaving room for change, leaving room for evolution allows you to be, will I say, semi-permeable or permeable or malleable enough to adjust and to adapt when there are changes to your status quo, And so when I talk about when I ask myself the question, what would I be known for? What would I be known for? It is, at the end of the day, what would people think of when they hear my name? When people hear Maliseh Chinonye, what is the first thing that comes to their mind? Now, Paul says something, the Apostle Paul, in one of his letters, I can't really remember, and I really do not like paraphrasing, but permit me to paraphrase. He says, I am all things, I am all things to all men, I become all things to all men. I'm really sorry, I can't remember exactly word for word, but what I'm trying to draw out from that scripture that I cannot remember is that Paul was able to wear multiple hats. I would say in today's world, they call the person who wears multiple hats a multi-potentialite. Paul was a tent maker originally, and he used to persecute Christians, and then through the miracle of salvation, he became he became the preacher to the Gentiles. Yeah? Became the preacher to the Gentiles. And so he did not throw away his tent maker cap. He still wore it. And that was how he met Aquila and Priscilla, who were instrumental to his ministry, to the spread of his ministry, So basically what I'm trying to get out of it is that you can be a lot of things to a lot of people. What would people think when they think of you? And the reason I'm saying this is that a lot of people view me in different ways. A lot of people see me differently. To my family, I'm a sweet angel boy who couldn't kill a fly. Maybe has moments where maybe I have my moments where I throw fits and I misbehave, or I'm stubborn or something. I have those moments, but beyond that, sorry, if there was any disruption, I had to change the mic. I'm using a lapel mic, so support us, let us buy Shaw or Rode, yeah. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, to my parents, I am what I am. To different people, I've been so many things at several points in my life. I probably have been the biggest jerk they've ever met. I've probably been the sweetest guy they've ever met. The guyest guy, the bestest friend. Being the most chill person. I'm just a chill guy. To a lot of people, different things. But the ultimate thing, I will say, the culmination of my life is more important than the individual representations to different people. When people say, oh, when I met him, he was this, he was that, that's all cool. Those are perspectives. But when all those perspectives come together, when there's a culmination and say, okay, what do you know him for beyond? It should be, oh, he was a podcaster who found or was able to find the intersection between faith and culture, between the Christian faith and culture, how it is that the Christian faith can influence the culture. It doesn't conform, but it transforms it. He spoke with clarity, he spoke with audacity about his belief in Jesus, and he did so many things in the media space, all pointing to his love and his, commitment to the Lord's work. That should be the culmination of my life. That is what I would rather be known for than anything else. If I'm just known as the guy who has a podcast, that's cool. Because when you come to the podcast, it opens up and then you see that I transitioned. It was probably slow, but eventually we got there. I transitioned, I kept on growing till I was able to find my footing and be more expressive and open and clear about my faith. And in essence, that is the end goal of life. What is the end goal of life? The end goal of life is that when all is said and done, I was able to do what I was put on earth to do. That is the end goal. Because when we are strutting down, walking down the aisle to the pearly gates, when those gates are thrown ajar and we are waltzing through as we hear a symphony of Hosanna in the highest and this melodious ring of an ethereal sound, as all those things are happening, and then we meet our Creator, we stand with Him, we see Him face to face. I want to hear good and faithful servant. That is what I want to hear. That He gave me talents and I didn't say, oh, the talents you gave me are not enough. See that person, you give that person more talents than me. Then He says, oh, wicked servant. So to whom much is given, much is expected. And even the little that is given to someone, if they don't use it, it will be taken away from them. People say, oh, it's only people who have much. With great power comes great responsibility. True. But even with the less of power comes responsibility. So whatever stage or whatever point you are in life, there is responsibility. You are responsible for your life. And it's something I'm having to remind myself of, that I'm responsible for the outcome of my life. It is very easy to say, my parents were supposed to do this, they were supposed to do that. If they had done this at a certain point in my life, I probably would not be where I am today. I would have done this, blah, 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 blah. It's very interesting. It's very beautiful and very relieving to give excuses. But at the end of the day, you, me, we all are responsible for the outcomes of our life. So as you walk down the Hall of Fame, what would you be known for? What would you be known for? Will there be someone that can be pointed to and say you affected this person's life in no small way? Maybe you were a catalyst that created a spiritual chemical reaction in them that spurred them to a new life, that spurred them to pursue purpose relentlessly. Would that be said of you? Would that be said of me? Would that be said of us? So what I want to do this year is ask us questions that leave us pondering. We talk about things that we otherwise don't want to talk about, don't want to think about. We think about these things. And there's a list of things. I have some series lined up that I want to talk about on faith. I haven't really been as explicit on faith as on the Christian faith, is what I mean, as I want to, but going into it, we're gonna do it. You know, a couple of things lined up. We're gearing up. We're gearing up. We're gearing up for great things this year. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. That's the episode. Thank you for listening. Follow us. All the links are down in the description on Instagram. From time to time, I'll post updates if there's anything new. Follow us, share with your friends on all of your socials. We had an amazing 2024. I think I'm going to say this a couple times before I stop saying it. But now I believe that we're going to have an even more amazing 2025. So yeah, share with your friends, share with your family, your loved ones. You know, have these conversations with your friends, with your loved ones, with your spouse, your potential spouse, you know, and get all the clarity or the much needed clarity. All right. Thank you all for listening. Wherever you are, wherever you find yourself, there might be darkness, but you have the power to flip the switch and illuminate. I love you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Ciao.